So I'd like to call the JP&L Judiciary Personnel Licensing Committee order at 6:30. We have one topic for discussion this evening, which is the the village's contract with the Horton Group and potentially RFP for a new insurance broker. So I don't know if you want to start or.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
So this is the first RFP under the new adopted purchasing policy that we've had. So basically, we have an insurance broker known as Horton Group, who I think the village dating back several years. I can't even find the time that they first started with us. It's been for so long. But they've been our insurance broker. Primarily work on health insurance, but they work on other fringe benefits such as dental. If we have any questions on like an FMLA or any Affordable Care Act reporting, stuff like that, we'd be able to consult with them. And every year when we go out for bid, there's a lot of time that goes to putting together those documents to go out for bid, and that they do that primary work for us. Doing that in-house, that takes quite a bit of time, so that for a municipality our size, majority of municipalities choose to go that route to help provide those services. So we're just going to be going out for bid, identify these the dates, and thinking June 3rd is when we can have the village board consider service agreement that we would want to start sometime in mid-June or whatnot, and that should be enough time for either the Horton Group or if we have a new consulting group to be able to put together we always do like a first half of the year analysis on our health insurance usage and kind of get an idea of what that would mean for health insurance premiums. So that would be a very appropriate time for us to be able to finalize that agreement.
Okay, so we would have the data from the previous half of the year, the first half of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions at all?
How do you currently pay them?
It's through commission.
What's that mean exactly?
So they always get a percentage of whatever, whatever we're paying for our premiums, they get a percentage of that. Yeah.
Is that standard?
It's pretty standard. Yeah. Sometimes some companies may do it for just a certain fee, but majority of them do it on a commission basis.
But then if they go out and give us the lowest number, then their commission, isn't that kind of working against their commission?
Well, if they don't do that, then the municipality will simply not hire them. So, yeah, you would think, right, so from a commission perspective, they could get more if you go with the higher, right? But if they're pushing that with a municipality, then, a municipality will not want to be with them. So it's in their long-term interest. We always try to help the municipality to get the best bid. And sometimes it's not always the lowest bid, depending on what the breakdown is of the benefits. But at least some of the decisions we've made lately, we've gone with the lowest bid to try to conserve the village's portion of the payment.
So when they come back, just to be clear, do they come back with proposed kind of premium outlay and the commission?
Yep.
And do they pose a number of options there? So we'll see. Do we see? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do we see everything with the RFP, or do we just see the commission?
I'm hoping to do everything. Okay. There's going to be some that when we receive, they're only going to show you. They're only going to do it for on a commission basis or whatnot. But I'm going to ask them that if they're willing to do it for just a a payment, not commission, what that looks like, and what's the reasoning behind it. Same thing with a commission, what's the reasoning behind, and go through the pros and cons and illustrate that through the RFP process. So we'll be able to see all of that before making a decision.
Okay.
And then before we finalize, the one other thing I want to ask, and we've done this through some of the other RFP processes, and I think for this one it would be helpful, is having a representative, and you as the chair, I think it would make sense having you part of the interview process. So I just wanted to extend that invite and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of the interview process, and I don't know if you are interested in being in the interview process. So, I mean, I'm happy to take that on. In my other life, have some background in somewhat insurance related HR kind of tasks. So, sort of am somewhat knowledgeable about it. So, I think that I would enjoy it as well. Sorry.
Also, please feel free. I'm an insurance attorney, so I feel like I should be like offer my services if you want to pull me in.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help out. I mean, it's not exactly my area of expertise, but if there are kind of insurance specific questions, I can at least do my best to answer them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to sit down on the interviews. I know you mentioned that we've had Horton for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Have we, like, every year do we RFP?
No,
So
this is the first time.
we've RFP'd?
Yeah.
Okay, so this will kind of be a learning experience for...
Yeah. There's a good amount. I think Horton says they do all municipal and school districts are the main clients, and they have about 40-some, majority are in the Milwaukee area. There's some throughout Wisconsin that they have, but there's a few other providers, like Whitefish Bay uses Hayes, which we'll be reaching out to. And you know, you realize a lot of their formulas for whether they do a commission or a payment are pretty similar. So when it comes to this, I would expect it's more about expertise and connection. I don't know if that's why when Chris was manager, why we always just stuck with Wharton because of that, because we had a history for them. But you know, I think that's one of the things that through the interview process, it'll be good for you to see the different groups that could provide the services because they kind of provide it slightly in different ways. So we can kind of weigh the pros and cons of each.
I know, if I remember correctly, there was some discussion about the school district, and like, do you know who they use as their agent?
I have it written down somewhere. I just don't know on the top of my head. But I know they use someone. Yeah, I know they use someone, but I don't. It's one of the main ones too that we'll definitely be reaching out to get a proposal from. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity for cost savings. You know, if we were to, you know, do some sort of cost sharing or. Yeah, the employees together.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know that, and you know, if we are going up for RFP and we're potentially looking at who their agent is, it might be worth exploring at that time.
Yeah. I mean, it's up to you as a committee. I would say, you know, if we want to get someone by June, that might be a little difficult. If you also remember, we talked about that idea last October, and Horton mentioned that one of the pros behind it is, yeah, it could potentially, I mean, it's a larger pool. So anytime you have a larger pool, right? The cons is that they're on a different fiscal calendar than we are. So they're doing open enrollment at a different time that we're doing open enrollment.
Is that because of their fiscal, like,
yeah.
So even though their fiscal year is different, their insurance years?
I've been told that they're on, I'll confirm that, but I believe they're on a different open enrollment period. Because usually open enrollment you want to do towards the end of your fiscal calendar, because then you learn for the upcoming year who's going to be on your insurance, and that's the best way to budget for it. But I will confirm that, because I'm not 100% sure on.
Okay.
The other thing to keep in mind is they have a completely different structure of their health insurance and the health insurance offerings. So I think that was one of the cons that Horton Group provided, is the fact that the school district has a very different structure. The last thing that I remember them saying is one group will end up subsidizing the other group. So because whenever you have two groups that end up joining, you always have a better user group and a worse user group. So I don't know who that would be, but there would be somebody that would be subsidizing the other group, and that would just be something to keep in mind. But I don't want to be closed-minded to it. I mean, I think anytime that you can, combine, there's always some potential, some good things happening.
I think that I agree with that subsidy argument to an extent, but I also think that the more people you have, the more healthy people you have, so your cost will generally go down as a whole. Now, one will subsidize the other, but you will generally bring costs down.
So I think what I would recommend,
Well,
if
can I ask
that,
another question? Would we have to combine, if we were to go out for insurance together, would we have to offer the same program? Or could we offer, could the school, because they're unionized and, there isn't a way that us and the school board together could negotiate one healthcare package. But I mean, could we maintain two different
I see what you're saying.
systems, but.
I don't know the answer to that, but there's a potential for that. We could structure the RFP to say, for the whoever the school district is using, that if they were to also have us and agree to do it on one contract, that what would the for them to explain in their proposal.
That might be really hard for them to project.
Yeah, because I would have to find out with the school district on, like, I don't know if they have like a multi-year agreement, or if they've been just kind of like us, where they've just been doing it year by year, and it's not, I don't know if they've RFP'd it. So, those are things I'm not sure of.
But there is some room for differentiation. I mean, for instance, Northwestern Mutual offers two different plans, two different
Right.
options each place. So we kind of run it the same way. It can be different administratively, but combined up for the purposes of pricing and for the larger purpose. And maybe that's something we table until the next year, but I think it's doable.
Maybe we should, approach the school district and talk about it.
Yeah, if that's something you're serious about, maybe, we have for a lot of our agreements, we've been doing 3-year agreements, but if that's something we're seriously considering, we could still just do the RFP how it is. In the meantime, I can reach out, get that information from the school district before the June 3rd meeting. So when I put those agenda packet materials, I'll provide that information so and maybe that's a determination you can make when identifying the length of the agreement and just other factors.
How many employees does Village have? About 200?
Village we have 85 FTEs, and we have about, out of those 85 FTEs, it's about 50 or so that are on the Village plan, but about 10 to 12 of those 50 are retirees.
Wow.
So that's the
Because they have about 300.
yeah.
They would add. Now they're mostly, I would guess they're younger, but they also have a lot of teachers having babies too.
Yeah.
Office breeders.
Yeah.
Add to the cost.
The advantage of using the same contract, the financial savings would be if we could go out for bid at the same time for insurance. And because that saves them time, right? So that's where the efficiency is for them. But if they're on a different cycle, which I think, and that will help. If I can confirm that, that will help for us to understand. Because if they're doing 2 different cycles, it'd be really hard for whoever to compromise and get them off their current open enrollment cycle will be difficult. Because I know with me helping that would be very hard for the Village to do, to change our open enrollment
But I
cycle.
thought that when Horton was here the last time, we were talking about that, about having to move open enrollment. I forget why, because they wanted to go out to bid earlier in the year. So weren't they or maybe it was just the bidding, maybe it didn't have to do with open enrollment.
Yeah, going a month or 2 in advance, that's not an issue for But I think the change was if we were to,
But there would be, even just for that part of it.
I think someone mentioned if we were to go
And I still think doing.
and like change our open enrollment 6 months, and I think that's where they mentioned the budgeting impact, where it gets tricky for municipality. So we mentioned doing like a 6-month open enrollment period and then doing it again, so you know who's on your insurance plan before,
Before you go out to bid.
yeah, or before you finalize your budget.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe for this time frame, maybe it does make sense, kind of like what you were saying, to go out for RFP so that we can hit that June deadline, but sort of lay that groundwork with the school district of reaching out, like when is their open enrollment, you know, who do they use, and just see if we, you know, I like my gut, and I don't work in insurance, but just would tell me that if we could get more people on the same plan, and potentially offer, I mean, there are like cafeteria options where you can pick and choose, you know, and the district might, you know, have one thing so they can pick and choose, and the village has other things, you know, even if that's not this year coming up, but the following year, and then just sort of keep that in mind as we're looking at the length of contract. Seems like a pretty solid game plan to me. I don't know.
I think that's right. I mean, given the numbers, you know, 50 compared to 300. I mean, even though there are a lot of babies being had, I think that that's got to bring down. That would theoretically bring down our costs.
Right. Yeah.
If we could somehow line up the cycles. So I would be fully supportive of that option. Realize that now it might not be an option right this second,
Right.
but I think it's.
but I mean, if we go for a 3-year contract, then we're kind of.
Well, but I'm saying, like, don't go for a 3-year contract. Like, go for a 1-year contract.
We'll know that in
and-
advance.
Yeah.
What I can do is, when we set up the interviews and the pre-meetings,
Mhm.
I mean, I'll know who, by then, who has their contract, and I'll be able to follow up
Okay.
with them on some questions.
Sure.
And I'll just email the 3 of you.
Okay.
And we'll know that well in advance so that we can plan accordingly.
We could also, you could even tell the lawyer, whoever's working on the agreement, build in a note. So if we say, you know, we can opt out of the contract should we choose to combine our services with that of the school district.
That's good.
That's a great, yeah.
I don't know that there's a real necessary reason. Is there a necessary reason that we have to go out by June, other than that's where it is on the schedule? I mean, we could just stick with Horton, right?
Yeah, I mean, the later we get, yeah, if you wanted to stick with Horton for another year and then just go out for, you know, the bid next year, or RFP the next year, not a problem. You know, that's why I mentioned the length of the contract. You know, there's some strategy there when we want to set it.
I mean, you know what, I think you should have a preliminary conversation with the district and see what the response is. And if it looks like there's potentially something, then come back and maybe we should wait a year and try to get that together. I think that makes more sense than going to bid and just doing a 1-year contract. I don't know.
Well, the only thing I would wonder though is, since we haven't gone to bid in forever long, like, what if we go to bid and there's like some pretty significant cost savings even for a year? And we could be missing out on that.
Hey,
Well, how
do
about,
you have that
how about
email
this?
that you sent me?
Is there
Print
anything
that?
else
It's
with
not
the
part of
RFP
it?
that you have
Session?
questions on? If
Yes,
you're
I
okay,
have
if we could have it on the April 2nd board meeting, and then in that memo, I will try to get information by then, so it'll be in the memo. And then if there's somewhere for the approach, whoever's the current, school district provider, if they could identify their approach and the proposal, how they would go about, or if there'd be any savings or anything like that, they could specify that in the proposal. And I could have that ready for April 2nd. Is that okay?
I won't be missing that meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Was this the insurance benefits?
Yeah.
I'll just say my comments up there. Couldn't have time.
Well, I'm not feeling like.
Or you want me to just wait 1 year?
On the one hand, I'm not sure the school district, I think if we were to go in with the school district, it's probably like a couple-year process to really work that out, how that could happen. So there's that on that, but I mean, I don't see that happening immediately, that's a longer term thing. But on the other hand, I don't feel like a real urgency that we have to go out to bid on this either, but, so I guess I would say more, yeah, let's go out to bid, have an out, that if we combine with the school district, that we may be out of the contract. And then just work on that on the back burner, you know, because I don't see it being,
I think we already have an out. I think we say if one of the parties wants out, that they could within 30 days or something like that.
Yeah, let's just make sure that that's.
Yeah, so I don't think that'll be an issue.
Did anyone mention, I'm sorry, just one quick thing, getting trustees having the ability to buy into the plan if we wanted to? I remember you had brought it up, I had brought it up, that our current provider does not allow that. So I'm just wondering if that's in there, like, noted. Anyway, it doesn't, I don't know if I need to.
It's not that they wouldn't allow that.
I felt that if you had to ask for it, you were probably a bad risk.
That would just be changing our policy.
Oh, I thought it was because it was the county, we were, I have an email on this, but I thought it was because we were.
It's not that they wouldn't allow it, it's the current insurance provider would not allow it. So if we go out to bid again, that would be one of the parameters that they would have to be getting bids.
Okay, just keep
for.
that in mind, I didn't know if it needed to go.
That's nothing to do with the actual Horton group. Yeah, so that would have no impact on this.
And that might not drive up costs. I mean, I would think there'd be a questionnaire that trustees would fill out, you know, maybe an actively at work questionnaire, like, so something that, I don't know if that would drive up costs for the board, depending on whether they administer the product. So, I think.
What are you, discriminating against the sick?
I'm not discriminating,
You are.
I'm just trying to figure out how the
I
product
see.
would work in and of itself. Thinking about the Northwestern Mutual would do group products, so.
So, for the three-room agreement, bring to the full board April 2nd then? Okay. That's it?
Need a motion to move adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
You're right, this would be healthcare, so this would be a little different, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
You want to second it?
I'll second that. Sorry.
Okay,
And adjourn at 6:53.
great.
Okay, so I will call the committee of the whole meeting to order. It is 6:54. Has this committee been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
Okay, all trustees are here, are present except trustee Bockhorst and trustee
for a second.
Maher. Oh, I'm sorry, are excused for a moment. Do you want me to pause for a minute? Should I pause? I can pause, I didn't realize that.
No, I think we could probably go into the next steps for the volunteer committees.
Sure, okay. So the first item on our agenda today is just next steps for volunteer committees. There was a memo provided by Rebecca, and I know that we still have things that we need to talk about standing committees, and but we don't have enough time today, so we're just going to focus on volunteer committees and the annual planner. They're supposed to be starting their annual review of their initiatives from last year, the reporting, and then also coming up with what they want to do for next year. And so that's why we're taking this ahead of the rest of the stuff. Rebecca, do you have anything that you need?
I mean, I pretty much covered it in the memo, but we're a couple months behind on that portion. And we're gonna have to start internally ramping for long range plan review, so we wanna get this started so that we can catch up a bit and have those. One of the things that the board mentioned in one of our recap sessions last year is they would have liked to have a better idea of what committees had on their docket for the following year before going into the board's prioritization of their initiatives. So this was designed to happen before. We're a little behind, but we wanna focus on it, because they're also looking to.
And is the change in this memo really, after we spoke with the committee chairs at the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, I think what's changed in here is statutory committees would still need to coordinate more so, but the more educational committees like conservation, pet and bike, is it parks or? They do more educational things, and they could do their own, work on their own agenda and just forward it to us. So Is that correct?
Yes.
And what would happen with, so statutory would be Plan Commission, CDA,
Design review.
Design Review, Board of Appeals, I guess, but,
Yeah,
and,
Board of Review.
and Board of Review, which only meets once a year. But, so those committees would, what, Rebecca?
So they continue to work with their liaison. Some don't have active initiatives. For example, Board of Appeals doesn't actively talk about.
So it's Plan Commission,
Right,
CDA,
right.
and
You
Design
know,
Review.
I don't know if Bart wants to have some discussion with the Planning Commission based upon what he has outlined or not, but
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah.
Just because it's good, those three would take up a lot of staff time, correct?
Correct.
So, because they're bigger things.
Is this about, them writing their accomplishments and their goals for next year? Is that what this is about?
Yes.
And
Because the planning
proposing
commission
initiatives.
had a bunch of things last year that they wanted to do.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't imagine that that whole process is gonna be much more than, you know, a brief update, and, I mean, I think most of the things they put as their goals are probably, I don't see big changes, I guess.
Right. It'll probably take one meeting for the report, correct? Just, here's our accomplishments, and then one meeting on, we're gonna continue on doing this.
Mhm. I think just one of the things is we wanted to design a check-in.
Yeah.
And to also celebrate the things that have been done. You know, because so very rarely do we go back and reflect on the last year, and I think, you know, with our volunteer groups, with any group, it's important.
So can I just ask a clarification question? I'm sorry, Tristan. So for the statutory groups, do they still, are you proposing that they're still going to prioritization? So I see the dichotomy, I mean, what I like it, that the educational groups should work on whatever they have staff to do, because they're more volunteer. But what are we doing with the the three committees, CDA, Planning Commission, in the prioritization process?
Well, you know, I'll use CDA as an example. You know, they would be a group that would be looking to, you know, provide some direction in terms of what they forecast working on the next year. So that I'd have an opportunity to review that, to see what direction we're heading.
So I'm confused about what the board's role in this is, so if like the snow issue, for example, conservation or salt, for example, like if we, or garbage, I mean, we use conservation as a consulting body sometimes, and how, if they're gonna identify their own things and just give it to us for informationally, where is the interaction between the village board and the committees when we would like them to help us or come up with a recommendation or something?
Doesn't that happen all year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just you
right.
kind of refer
Right.
things at the board, you just refer to committee?
But
Okay, go ahead.
they're doing their list of things that they're going to do, that they get approved, not by us, by staff. And if there's something not on that list that we feel we would like them to work on, it's not on their work plan, you know, I just don't.
Is that the intent here?
I don't
Is to
see,
limit that type of-
I don't see.
That's a great question.
I don't see where the board is in here.
So I think that's a great question, because typically what the board will do for that is, if we're talking and we have future agenda items, we'll say, why don't we refer that to, you know, something will come up and we refer it to committee. So there's two things that those educational volunteer committees do, and one is they come up with what they want to work on, like the environmental film fair or whatever that is. So we know what that is, and then I'm sure when they present, you can say, well, here are some things we're thinking if we have them, but in general, we refer it down from the board, usually.
Right, but then that won't be on their list of
Correct.
approved things to work on.
But
So
is
that-
so what, did they wait till next year?
Yeah,
But if their
don't see
list
that
is,
as-
they're just communicating to us what they want to be doing in their volunteering time. If we have something we need to refer to committee, we just refer it.
Except that the way it's described here
Oh, is it?
is there's limited staff time. And so let's say HRC will say, okay, we're gonna do these things, and they meet with Tyler and says, okay, you can do, I have time to help you with these. And that's set then, that's their work plan,
Not
that's
until-
set.
not
So
until-
then-
not if
so-
we
so-
Can't we
sign
put
something down.
can't we put a phrase in there that makes it,
Yes.
that refers to this process too, where they would continue to serve as advisory committees? I don't think it's the intent of this to limit our ability to use them for advisory.
Yes.
But that's how it's written now.
Right, so
Yeah,
let's,
sure.
could you think
There's-
of,
No, I can't think of
Okay.
it. I mean,
Can somebody bring back an option?
Well, I think if
I'm
we
not
use your
gonna write
example
it.
for conservation committee, I think if one or two initiatives came up that were like time sensitive, that we would reprioritize, and, you know, I think that's something I can just work with Josh on.
Just stick a sentence in the middle.
And, you know, we
Just
can work
say,
with Josh on and say,
the board has
listen, at this point in time, these were your priorities, but certain events happen, now we're shifting your priorities, and it's gonna look a little different.
Just
And for their up
Yeah,
next
just
year,
one
that would be
sentence.
one thing that they report on then.
we need a sentence.
Yeah.
that
I'd
just
be
says-
happy to relay that to the committees because this was never to.
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think it needs to
be
I
in
don't
writing.
wanna have a,
That's
I
fine.
don't wanna have a written description of a process, how that process is gonna work, that has no opportunity for the board, and then, yeah, I mean, there has to be,
Yeah.
because then that's what the process is, what's written is the process, so there has to be something written.
It's a great suggestion.
In the end, one of the main functions of a lot of committees is advisory and provide recommendations to the board, so.
I do have a really, a strange question though. CDA at the City of Milwaukee, the board did not dictate to the redevelopment authority what to do. They're separate entities completely. And so we coordinated, I'm just saying the City of Milwaukee, that's how it operated, and we follow the same statute. So I'm just concerned, I mean, Rebecca, you're the executive director of the CDA.
Mhm.
If we want, I mean, we've always had a great working relationship with them, but if they come up with, they want to do a housing study, which they've talked about for God knows how long, I mean, how much influence are we gonna sit there and say they can't do that when it's their own money?
Yeah, and I, as an example, when
I
I
see
brought
planning
up the,
commission.
was it, I asked if the board wanted to, on behalf of the bid, I asked if the board wanted to consider something, and our direction was to ask the CDA if they wanted to consider it as
Yes.
a priority, and that seemed fine because of the nature of they are a little bit more independent. So there's
They're
that,
completely independent.
but then there might be something at the board level where we would ask if they would consider,
Correct.
and then they could choose whether they wanted to prioritize that or whatever. And I'm sure they would work in the
Yeah.
best interests of
So I
everyone.
just wanna clarify that. I just wanted to make sure, cause we lumped them into that, you know, if staff has time. And your comment of how do we ask for things, so something in those statutory ones as well. The board can always request that they look at something if we need advice or if we need, you know, we feel like the board needs some direction and help. But I do feel that if they come up with, we wanna do a housing study, it's their money and it's their time and their statute.
Yeah, and all
Planning
those
commission's
things.
a little different because that's our zoning code, right? I mean, we're talking about our law that the board has to then adopt, so,
I don't know, we have to ask Nathan, I mean, we have statutory independence too,
you know.
I don't know.
It's 7:03.
Okay.
So I just wanted to check in on the time
Who's
and
attorney? I
the
think the attorney was gonna
pulse
be-
of the direction.
This seems pretty good. I think if you just maybe add some sentences for both of those committees of that the board can make suggestions and then and for the volunteer committees that they can drop it. I mean, if we need something done
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the year, then we reprioritize.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I think they're gonna be expecting that.
great.
Right. Okay.
I just need to make a motion into closed session.
Trustee Warren, will make it.
I thought I was gonna make it, and I wasn't. I moved to go into closed session pursuant to 1985 1G to confer with legal counsel on strategy regarding pending litigation regarding Roundy's assessment.
I have a motion and a second. Is this a roll call? So trustee Carpenter?
It is a roll call.
Okay, roll call vote?
Trustee McKay.
Yes.
Trustee Carpenter.
Yes.
President Isaac.
Yes.
Trustee Menton.
Yes.
Trustee Bachler. Yes. Trustee Warren.
I
Trustee Maher.
So we are now in closed session. Double barrel.
I know, wow.
Ready to go?
I took your cue and I had.
Did you turn it off?
No, but I will.
Here's a hard one.
I can mail it.